Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at another devblog for the next major update, which has to be coming out soon now. This is the AH-1W, the Super Cobra. This is an attack helicopter, which is going to be coming in for the Americans, and also the Chinese tech tree at rank 6. It has access to a ton of different ordnance options, and also some pretty cool camos, which never should be looked over. It's always nice to see some beautiful camos, and the Marines definitely have some great ones. Let's get into the history of this machine. As the AH-1 Cobra entered service with the Army, the USMC expressed their interest in acquiring Cobras for their own use. However, these Cobras would have to be twin-engined and possess a more capable primary armament to meet the Marines' service requirements. Despite initial hesitation from the Department of Defense, the Marines received the go-ahead and proceeded with awarding Bell with a contract to produce 49 AH-1J Sea Cobras in May of 1968. Similarly to the Army, the USMC also perceived the H-1 as an interim vehicle until a more suitable replacement could be found. Whilst this replacement would come to the Army in the form of the AH-64 Apache, the USMC's request to upgrade their fleet with a naval version of the Apache would be met with disapproval by the Congress in 1981, thus forcing the Marines to look into other options. The decision was therefore made to upgrade the existing fleet with new AH-1W Super Cobras, which featured an improved fire control system and the ability to carry more advanced ordnance. With the AH-1W coming in, you have a really souped-up Cobra. I don't really know how else to put it. This vehicle has so many more ordnance options than many of the other Cobras that are in the game, and this means that it will be at a much higher BR, but also should be able to deal with it. The only issue is obviously with the way that the game works. Its BR will be based probably on it being fully spaded, and it won't exactly be easy to fully spade this thing because of, well, how the games work. First of all, the helicopter itself does have a few differences instead of just its weaponry. It has access to two General Electric T700 G401Cs instead of a single Lycoming T53. This will give it a better top speed and also technically more survivability, since if one engine gets hit, the other one should still be able to go. And also, at the same time, better acceleration, which is huge. It also gets an upgrade in the air-to-air armament compared to a lot of the H-1s. It gets access to AIM-9Ls, two of them on the kind of hard points itself. It also can carry quite some funny loadouts, 4 20mm cannons on the wing pylons, plus of course the rotary in the center could be quite funny, but it also gets access to TOW-2s, which don't have a great launch range of 4 kilometers for the BR that this thing's going to be, but it also gets Hellfires. So the AGM-114Bs are coming in, which will be quite nice. They also talk in the devblog about the fact that the Alpha Strike Major Update is almost ready for release, so it'll probably be coming pretty soon, which is quite good. And the thing about the H-1W that has to be said, and not really talked about in the devblog, is on the dev server, it actually had some pretty good defensive systems, which I think is the bigger upgrade over some of the other H1s. It had it had all of that good old setup, and also a ton of countermeasures to be able to keep itself alive, and this is super useful, especially in ground realistic, because of course it's a automatic system to be able to keep you alive. And since this thing may see quite a lot of IR guided stuff or IR seeker heads, it will be able to kind of divert those against other things. The only issue with this is because it's a souped up Cobra, the real question is, do you take an Apache over it, or will it be at a BR where it will have a lineup where the Apache wouldn't have one? Because the reason, why is, at least in the American tech tree, you have, of course, the good old Apache, which is pretty good and also has all of the options that this thing has, and will also have the head-mounted display in the next update, so it'll give you more options to be able to attack from different areas. With this coming in, not just for America, but also for China, though, it could also give, more options for China, which would be quite nice, and they obviously don't have the Apache stuff, so it's not going to work as well. It also technically could rocket rush on certain maps and be incredibly quick and powerful doing it, so you're probably going to see stuff like that, very similar to how people play the AH-1G, and also it has very good optics too. This very much reminds me of vehicles in War Thunder like the M48, where the M48 is upgraded so much, it's upgraded to a ridiculous level, and it basically becomes a completely different machine. If you compare this to the earlier Cobras, there's not really a lot that is the same, at least in terms of playstyle, and that is pretty interesting to see. Whereas with the M48s, you can compare, let's say, the standard M48 to the souped-up version of the M48 that the Germans have, the Super M48, and you can see the massive differences between those. You have a different turret, you have a stabilized gun, you have APFSDS, you have the thermals, you have everything, and it's obviously much higher BR for it, but also means that sometimes it struggles at the earlier stages. One of the issues that helicopters have is very similar to a lot of ground forces, where you have a look at the Israeli Magaks, for example. The Magak 6, if you look at like the 8.0 Magaks and the 9.0 Magaks, in a stock configuration, they're exactly the same. And the only thing that actually gets worse as you go up in BR is the weight of a lot of these vehicles when you are stock. But once you get all of the modifications, once you get all of these general, pieces of the pie, it does actually become pretty fun. But it also means the stock actual play of these vehicles is a pain to be part of. Now, luckily for helicopters, you have Heli PvE, so it can definitely make it a little bit easier. And also, at the same time, I know there's been a ton of people who have been looking forward to the AH-1W or AH-1W for a long time because, of course, it's Marine service. So I'm sure there'll be many people who are hankering to get through that area of it anyway. The kind of stock area which hurts while playing this type of machine. A lot of helicopter trees are pretty kind of fleshed out now as well. If you have a look at the American one, it has multiple lines, same with many of the other ones, and there has been a conscious effort over the last years to be able to add a ton of these vehicles into the game for separate nations. And with the recent additions, the only real question is when will America get its fire and forget air-to-ground missiles? And I'm sure the AH-1W could carry stuff like the Hellfire L, just like how the Apache could, since they're around at pretty much the same time. Now that the Israelis, the French, the Germans, and also the Italians all have fire and forget mechanics, I think eventually it's going to be time for America to get them too, and then all hell will break loose. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Schnitzel Stroker, Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, B. Young, Opium Prime, Masonocrat, Lafouche, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.